Hi, loves. You're here with Awakening with Allie, back with myself, Allie. So excited to have you here, whether you're listening or watching. I have my dear friend Lisa, and this is like take two for us. Even though you guys didn't hear the first episode, we recorded a whole episode, and so somehow, universe, whatever else, just happened to disappear. Not really sure. So we were laughing about it before we came on. We have all our crystals on our desks, like, okay, let's make this happen. And we're being really daring, recording this during lunar eclipse and full moon and everything else, but we're going for it.
Going all in, and I feel like it's sort of like there's a reason why you couldn't find it, and it took almost. We laughed about it in the episode that you could never find that we recorded. That we tried to do an episode for what, like 2 years. We finally
Literally.
recorded in July, and then disappeared.
Just
Yeah. So
kidding.
here we
Yeah.
are. Just
Here we
kidding.
are. Yeah, exactly. Here we are in November. And yeah, we're just gonna flow, make it work. And we were even talking about how we're not even sure what we're even going to talk about, but we're like,
Yeah.
we're here, we're doing it, we're showing up and making it happen. So I mean, I guess a good place to start would be, you have been, quite awake to the spiritual realm for many, many years. I feel like, so many people in this time are starting to tap into this more, want to learn more, are awakening to more. Obviously, my show is called Awakening with Allie, and I always say to everyone who comes on, like, what was your awakening? So why don't we start there?
That's a good place to start. Yeah. So I guess I started to awaken really in 2007. And then I sort of took like an 8 year like dive into like what the heck is going on. And then in 2015, it really just really hit me. And I really did my deep dive work back in 2015. But like we talked about in the episode we cannot find, the catalyst for my awakening was meeting my current husband. And he's my twin flame, which I actually didn't even know what that was until 2015. So I went through 8 years of craziness, of hell, of like the runner and the chaser and the what the heck is going on and all the weird emotions and the energy running through my body. And there was no community really to tap into to figure out what was going on. And I couldn't really talk about it with people because nobody was talking about it. So I sort of just kept it to myself, or I spoke about it with him. But then in 2015, when we reconnected after on and off years, I really started to research this online, and I started to find that there actually was a community for this. That there were actually real signs for spiritual awakening. I had no clue. So physical symptoms that I had gone through for 8 years consecutively, there actually was a label for it. There actually was a reason for it, and I felt so comfortable. But still, it was just me and the internet, right? So like I wasn't really talking about this with anyone because like what am I going to say? I have energy running through my body and they're going to look at me like, okay, you're crazy, right? So I went through my spiritual awakening in stages, and I feel pretty early, and now I feel like people are starting to talk about it very openly. So here I am.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, and I agree with you. It's like 2022. Here we are. There's like a massive awakening, a massive consciousness shift. More and more people are starting to realize like there is more out there. There is more to this. It's not just this matrix, if you will. And it's funny when you said the 2007, because like I have a few people like I know that, also have said 2007 to me. And I feel like that was for a lot of people like that way earlier, like that first wave of like a lot of those people who, went through that and had no clue what they were going through and what was happening. And then like when you were saying 2015, like that was like another kind of wave from what I've heard and what I've read of like 2012 to like 2015 time. And then of course, COVID and everything else you want to call in the world of 2020, it was like boom, game on for those that were basically woken up. And it's interesting. I was having a conversation with someone the other day who was saying, like, we're all activated at different times. And, we all start to remember different things at different times that actually bring us back to that. You said the catalyst was, your now husband, who obviously I know very well. And, a little backstory was my manager for many years and, dear friend and everything else. But what would you say was actually the catalyst? Like, why was he the catalyst? Of course, you realize later on he was your twin flame. You guys went through a lot of, like you said, darkness and, havoc and just a lot of stuff in between because of a lot of noise going on around you. But what do you think was the actual like catalyst that made you realize like he was the one who kind of opened the door to all this for you? And then you continued to dive in further when you were willing to see it in 2015.
So if I could be really candid, I've always dabbled in the mystic and in spirituality since I was a little girl. My mom's pretty open-minded, and she got me into astrology at a young age. I was into crystals at a young age. I always felt a little different from people. I never really said this out loud. I always felt a little different. Like I always knew inherently there was more for me, but I didn't understand what it was or didn't know what it was. But I always felt like I beat a little bit differently to a different drum. And not just because I'm an Aquarius, but there was always something that I felt different. Like I would be in a group of people, but I would feel almost like I was observing them. And I was like, there was something more and I couldn't put my finger on it. And the second I met, and I was married with two kids. When I met my husband, he was married too. And the second I saw him, and he as well with me, as he had said to me later on, it was like, there you are. And it literally, I can't explain it other than I visually saw him and a portal opened inside of me, which I didn't understand. I didn't
Mm.
understand it for many years. I couldn't understand what it was. Something just opened inside of me. It was like I was home. I was home. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't understand what that meant. All I knew was that I call it the before and after. All I knew is that I felt like I was playing a role in real life, but that wasn't the real me. And I didn't understand why, right? I didn't know all this stuff. And so I would be around him and I would like have this energy and this magnetism, but more of like a spiritual way. And I was like, what's going on? And he was much more awakened than I was at the time. And he's like, and he kept saying in time, in time. And I'm like, what do you mean in time? Tell me now. Like, I can't tell you. You have to like, you'll have to figure it out on your own. But essentially what it was is it made me really just kind of question things, I guess, and kind of, but not even question the way it is, kind of like give me reassurance that I knew that the feeling of not fitting in certain places was okay. Like that, oh, now I understand why I don't, even though I didn't understand why at the moment. Like this makes sense, right? It made sense on such a different level that I couldn't talk about it with other people because it's, going down the rabbit hole, you can't really talk about it with other people without them thinking like, okay, she's like, I don't know where she's coming from. So that was sort of the catalyst. So I was sort of relying on him to kind of crack me open, but it wasn't that he cracked me open. He just reminded myself to crack myself open.
Yeah, wow. And like when you said that you found home, I think that a lot of people who have awakened, who have realized like what you were saying of like, I never really fit in, I'm playing a role or whatever it may be, they realize like they come home to themselves, right? Like I also can very much resonate to that as I started to allow myself to go deeper and dive deeper in the spiritual realm and realize how much more I was connecting to and how much more actually made sense to me. And I was like, oh, this does feel like really safe to me. This does feel like home, but you feel crazy saying that, right? Because like most people don't have, I mean, now, right? More and more people are having these conversations, but back then, especially in 2007, like you were saying, and even 2015, nobody really was. You were just crazy and out there and whatever. But now, like we're seeing like actual people have conversations about consciousness and energy and, how there is so much more and how you are coming home to yourself essentially and you're remembering so much and so much is coming online for you. And so it's just really interesting to hear you share, from all you've gone through from 2007 to 2015. And I also love that he really honored your own awakening instead of kind of telling you, hey, this is what it is. It was kind of like in time and time. And there it was, because we all have different journeys, right? We all awaken differently. Some people choose not to awaken. There's a lot to it, new souls, old souls. And, it's funny. My parents were here this past weekend and I was talking to my mom a little bit about this and very little because she does not, really get it or understand it or probably thinks part of me is crazy for sure. And so, I was talking to her about it, but it was funny. We were talking about my son, Abel, and how when he was, like first really came around, like he was pretty alert pretty early on. And she was like, well, you were that way. And I was like, oh, really? And she's like, you were born like eyes wide open, looking around like you had been here before. And it was just interesting how
Wow.
she had, said that. And I was like, well, maybe I was, I kind of planted that seed. And I was like, well, maybe I was, and she was like, maybe, and I was like, well, what do you mean? And even my dad chimed in, and he definitely doesn't connect to any of this. And he was just like, well, you did look around at like everything, like you literally, all the nurses, all the doctors, everybody in the hospital at the time was like, wow, she's literally looking at everything. She's so alert. Like she's, absorbing everything. Her eyes are wide open. Like, and they just said I took everything in, like literally within, minutes of being bored. And it's like, that's fascinating, because now I think about myself and how I am and everything. And what you were just sharing of how like you just start to awaken and you start to remember. And it's like, oh, maybe when we come in, we really do know. And then we forget, they say that, those of us who our older souls, who do know, who do remember eventually, you come in knowing, and then everything else in the world, like, you just forget, and it takes time. And so when you do realize all of a sudden, like, oh, something's going on, or for you was the catalyst with this relationship, like you said, it cracks you open, it lets you dive in deeper into like, huh, why have I been feeling that? And I think a lot of people can resonate, especially now, with that feeling of like, I've never felt like I fit in, or I've never felt like, this is exactly home per se, or this resonates for me. And, I'm curious for you, Isa, have you been told, are you a star seed?
I was told that a long time ago. Yes.
Okay.
I was told that a long time ago. Yeah. And for me, I think selfishly, because I'm an Aquarius, and when I started to read in 2015, when I started to read about all the changes that were going to come that actually now in hindsight have happened, it's the age of Aquarius. I thought it was about me. Like selfishly, I'm like, of course it's the age of Aquarius because I'm, a twin flame and I'm a star seed and we're supposed to bring light to this planet. This is all about my journey, right? It's all about me, like selfishly, because I didn't know anybody else. And when Russ met my husband, when he met me, he would always call me like golden girl because my eyes are like golden brown. And so like it's the golden age of Aquarius. So I was
Oh,
like, of
wow.
course it's about like in my head because I didn't understand what was going on. So I thought, okay, this is my journey. This is why I'm here. And but now it makes sense, but there's so much that happened that I just perceived as like, of course it's going to happen this way. Like when my personal life fell apart and the world fell apart, it felt normal because of course, like my personal life is falling apart, the world's falling apart. It's supposed to be like this. Like I can't explain it. Like it makes sense that it's like this. So everything that's happened in the last few years that people have seen as catastrophic, I haven't because I almost saw it coming before it happened. I knew it was going to happen because things in my personal life fell apart and then came together. And obviously the outer world would be the same. And why wouldn't it be? And like it's for the best. And like I see, we learn about these two earths, right? So back when I started learning about the two worlds back in 2015, I didn't understand how that was going to happen. I was like, I thought it would physically split into two worlds, like the 5D and the 3D. Like when I was starting to learn about it like 7 years ago, I was like, how is this actually going to happen? We're all waiting for it, right? But it's now we're in the midst of it and we see that it really is how you observe things. Like the way that I see something and you see something is very different than how somebody else perceives the world. Yeah, we're living in the same earth, we're just on different dimensions. And like I didn't know how that was possible, but we're actually living it right now. And somebody that's not awakened will be like, what the hell are you talking about? But for you and I feel like you understand what I'm saying, that how it's possible to have these two earths and kind of merge at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that you brought that up because also for me too, when I started kind of diving into this, especially in 2020, and I was listening to Doris Cannon and was really like following her stuff and she was talking about all that. I remember being like, okay, this is crazy. There's no way there's like a split. Like that's like, how does that actually work? Like we're not going to just, and I remember being like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. And I think a lot of people thought, in the physical, right? Because it kind of sounds that way when you're listening and you're trying to make sense of it yourself. Kind of makes sense actually, like when you said that out loud of how we work as far as humans, right? We just like overanalyze everything and then we create a story around it versus it actually just being what it is. And you're right. It's like now we're seeing it. Now we're actually seeing the split in the actual like dimensions. We're seeing the shift in consciousness, the shift in frequency of like someone seeing something as like a collapse of a system and being like, oh, it's exposure, it's collapse. And then someone else who's like, oh my God, everything's a shit show. What's happening? What's wrong? Why is it like this? Why, and it's like, no, this is actually what's necessary in order to move forward into the next way of things. So it's fascinating, and I think it's cool that you were also told you were a star seed, because I mean back then when someone said that to you, were you like, what, like how did you receive that? Because I was told that in 2018 and then again in 2020, so I feel like I was a little bit more, I didn't really know what it was, but I felt like I was a little bit more open to like understanding and like hearing more of that. So it was like, okay, other people have been told this too. It's not so weird. But I could imagine, like, again, like you said, not as many people were talking about this back then. When you were told that, like, what did you do with that when you're like, oh, you're a star seed, you're this? And please talk about how you were just saying how like the star seeds are truly here to like bring peace and bring the light. Cause I think that's a really important piece of this, because I was having a conversation with someone the other day and I was trying to explain to them, I'm like, look, it's not about being a quote unquote chosen one. Like we've all been chosen to be here during this time or we wouldn't be here, but it's about actually being activated. Like you said, it's actually awakening and remembering and choosing to choose this path versus a different path.
So, in full disclosure, he'll probably be upset, but maybe not. Russ actually used to tell me that back in 2007.
Ah, wow.
That was way,
2007. Wow.
when we first met, he would tell me all this, and it just made sense. And it felt, it just, it felt right. He's like, we're from the stars, you're a star seed, blah, blah, blah. And then when we went through our own personal journey and then broke up, got back together 2015, um, before we got back together, and somebody had said, how did you guys meet and what happened when you first saw him? And I explained, it was like, oh, there he is. It's like somebody split our souls in half. And I said to him the second time I ever saw him, I feel like you're the boy version of me. But I said it like the sky is blue. It wasn't like in any connotation other than I feel like our souls are the same. You're the boy version, and somebody ripped it in half. And I didn't know that that was what a twin flame was. And somebody said to me, well, is he a twin flame? And I was like, what the hell is a twin flame? And I went to go look it up and my jaw dropped open. And I didn't understand how the entire twin flame community knew the entire journey of Russ and myself because I thought it was just personal to us. I didn't realize when you read into that, if you believe that, which I do, because it's not like I knew what twin flames were and then thought, okay, maybe we are. I went through everything. And there's actually a checklist, and everything on the checklist was like we had gone through. And it, the purpose of twin flames, they say, is the last time that you reincarnate on this earth, which I believe you're finally together. And the purpose of it is to lock light into the grid and to elevate humanity because you're supposed to have a purpose beyond yourself. You're supposed to show unconditional love, but it's not just like a fairy tale love story. It's supposed to be like for humanity as well. So you're just supposed to express love to help raise the light of humanity. And I really do believe, I really do, in my heart of hearts, I know that that's why we're here. I just do. Like I know that that's why you're here. I know that's why we're here. And like I said, like you said, we're not the chosen people. Like everybody has this capacity. Everybody has it, but I just know deeply inside of me that that is why we are here. It just makes sense. I can't explain it. And every time I used to ask Russ to explain to me all the spiritual and mystical stuff, he said, I can't explain it in words. It's something you either have to feel or you don't, but words, you can't explain it in words. It's just, you'll know. And so
It's
innately,
true. It's like a
right,
resonance. Yeah.
right. It's a resonance, but it took me a minute to get there.
Oh, for sure. Same. And still like have my moments, it's like,
Yeah,
oh, really? This is what
yeah,
this is. Yeah,
yeah.
totally. And
It's
especially
fun
right.
though, as hard as it is, it's really fun. And it really, it just, I don't know if you feel the same way, Allie, but it's like, it just, it makes so much sense. So anytime I get stuck in like the ego paradigm and I'm like, I start to like spiral, I'm like, no, bigger picture, bigger picture. And it just calms me down.
Yeah, it's so true. That's such a good point. It's like being able to observe so much of your life and starting to be like, okay, I'm not going to get wrapped up on that. I'm not going to let that tear me down, or I'm not going to let that distract me, and letting yourself really just kind of reflect and observe. And like what I love that you always say, like dancing with your own darkness. It's so true.
Yeah.
Like we are
Yeah.
of dark and light. And so when we can recognize that and actually allow the shadow work to come through and either see the shadow for what it is and allow it to be transmuted and alchemized into light, or just allow it to be integrated into us further to continue to work within our darkness and light, it changes things. It lets us all of a
Yeah.
sudden really observe and lets us be like, okay, I'm not going to get caught in that narrative. I'm not going to get caught in that story. And I think that's a huge part of like, what the quote unquote matrix, whatever you want to call the world is. It's like we get caught up in the stories and the attachments, the things that are fed to us instead of actually trusting in our resonance, like you said, in our soul and what we actually know to be true. But we can't explain it and we can't necessarily like actually prove it, but we know like in our heart of hearts, like it is true. I think that's the hardest part, but also the most beautiful part of kind of the journey is like you know it and you feel it, but trying, like you said, to explain it, articulate it, or to even be like, and this is how I know, it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. And I think one thing for me was for so long, I wanted people to understand it on some level, even if I wasn't explaining to them and telling them like, because I would sound crazy, but I think I wanted everyone to understand it, but not everyone's going to understand it, and that's okay. And really, this life, like I thought for so long we were meant to like, or I was meant to like save the world and save others and this and that, and I was like in this like race to do it, but it's not really what this world is about. And like what you said earlier with the light and the dark, like it's okay to have the darkness. We don't need to eradicate. We can't eradicate the darkness. It's always there, but like this life really is our movie. Like it really is. When we think about it, we really are the creators of our life. Like, you hear that from Abraham Hicks, you hear that from Wayne Dyer, and it's so true. We forget that we can cultivate this life that we came here to experience. We're spiritual beings experience a physical reality. But in experiencing the physical reality, we asked, if you believe that, which I do, we
Yeah, I
asked to
do too.
experience everything because if you don't experience bad, how are you going to know good? Like, I believe, this is my personal belief, that when we transition into the ether, we transmute back into the energy that we are, and it's like the highest, purest form of energy, which is love. So this is like one of the densest planets, in my opinion, from
Oh,
what
absolutely.
what I
Yeah, from
know
what
that
I've
we
read
can be
too.
on,
Yes.
right? From what I know. And so this is sort of like, I'm not going to say like purgatory or anything, but this is like where we really like feel a lot of bad things and bad things happen. And we sort of made that choice before coming here. I believe in reincarnation. I believe that we made a choice to come here. That's just my personal belief that all spirits make a choice to come here. I believe our children choose us, et cetera, et cetera. You might have a different belief. Somebody, your listeners might have a different belief. That's okay. So I feel that when, in my opinion, when we're here, it's okay to experience everything. We don't always have to fix everything because that's the whole purpose of coming here. It's just to kind of let it be and let it flow and like feel the ebbs and the flows. Because for so long, I was trying to control everything in my life and in my surroundings to make everything good and everything perfect. That's not how life is, and that's okay. And so in it sounds counterintuitive, but in elevating the lightness of the planet, it's not that we have to exude light and make everything around us light. It's that we sort of have to accept everything that it is and still be okay in our lightness, even if there's shadows. And that's the way that we're going to, because we're not resisting against anything. I
Yeah,
don't know if that
really
makes
well
sense.
said. No, that totally makes sense. That really well said. And I agree with you. I think for a lot of us, when we awaken and when we start to tap into this, you want to awaken everybody. You want everybody to know because you want them to know how powerful they are. You want them to know that they can manifest anything, they can create anything, they can do all these things. Whereas society and programming tells us differently for obvious reasons. And so, when you start to really tap into this and you start to really get into these higher frequencies and you start to access your own gifts, you're like, why wouldn't everybody know this? Why wouldn't, you want everyone to know this, but you're right. It's so true. It's like, it has to be received in the purest way. And, trying to wake and shake people up, it doesn't work. If anything, it
Mm-hmm.
backfires on you and it lowers your vibration. And then you're just like, oh, what's going on? Why is it not working? And it's like, I think you said it perfectly too, of like who we are, and especially Starseeds are choosing to, be a part of this and help activate others and bring more light and love and peace and all these things here it's because, everything, like you said, is a reflection. So if we're going to continue to
Hmm.
work on
Yeah.
ourselves, or we're going to continue to work on everything we're going through, then it's going to eventually reflect out into the world and vice versa. So if we continue to try to shake and wake people up and continue to try to, tell people what they are and what they aren't and all these things, then we're not actually doing anything. We're not uplifting humanity. We're not working through the energy. We're just actually creating more chaos. So I love that you said that you came to a place of like that peace and realizing like, I don't need to do that. I'm going to just be me. And it's okay. Not everybody gets it. And it's okay that I, move forward in this journey and, continue to show up in my space and be in love and, do what I'm doing. And I think that's what I've come to also is it's like just showing up in that, and doing the best you can, obviously, as human as we all are, but still having that intention and, wanting to, move through with that and, bring that forward, to others. And I think too, like, in the awakening journey, so many of us do go through a dark night of the soul. We do go through, very hard
Hmm.
times, and so I think it's important to also talk about that too, because I think so many are going through that right now, as we know a lot more are kind of coming through this awakening, and they're like, what's going on? What's happening? They're hating, the positions they're in for jobs, they're not wanting to be with the partner they're with, they're not wanting to be, where they live, the list goes on. All these things are shaking them and challenging them and kind of showing them there's something else. And if they're not, like you said it perfectly, like if they're resisting it, it's persisting, it's continuing, it's not going anywhere, because that's what happens with energy. And if they're allowing it, then they're potentially going through this dark night of the soul. They're, experiencing something new. For you, without getting heavy into that, because that could be a whole nother episode. But like for you with your darkness, so what you went through, and obviously I know your story. We've been close friends for a long time now. But what would you share for my listeners who maybe are newer to this journey or experiencing this or have recently experienced this? Like, what was yours like, and what would you share kind of from going through that to where you are now?
Yeah, that's a good one. I met you at the dark night of my soul. You were a big part. You were a big part of my healing process. So for me, it really cracked me open because in order to, not to plug my book that I'm writing, but I write about this in my book coming up that in order to reconstruct yourself, you have to deconstruct yourself. And it sounds counterintuitive, but in order to recreate yourself, you have to break down every single part of you, which is the hardest part, in my opinion, because you're literally breaking yourself into like fragments and shards of your former self. And it's so difficult and painful. And it's people are judging you and people are giving their opinions and people are like, what's going on with you? And it's a really hard process, but it's so pivotal because I had this burning feeling inside my gut. I can only describe it as an actual physical sensation that I was like, I have a different purpose. I have a different purpose, and it's just burning to come out of me. And this is the person I want to be with, and this is the place that I want to be in. And it's so different than the belief system I grew up in per se. So it was like, how do I deconstruct this belief system that I built my entire life on? Because I'm following something that I can't explain other than it's just burning inside of me. And so that was a big part of my dark night with the soul of like really going deep within to my core and saying, what do I really want? And it's okay to give myself permission to pursue that, right? It's okay to, release my outdated stories and stuff like that. But really on the other side of it, it's so beautiful when you get there because you don't even have to know where you're going. And I think that's important for your listeners to know if they're going through this. You don't need to have an end goal. It's okay if you don't know where you want to go, what you want to do, why you're doing this. You just need to know that if you've got that feeling, just follow it because your gut never lies. It really never lies. And anytime, and I heard this from Abraham Hicks actually, anytime you're feeling uncomfortable or resistance or anxious or anything like that, it's because you're going against your true self. When you are in flow with who you truly are, you're feeling like at peace and just very much enjoying and love. When we feel angst and out of sorts, it's because we're resisting our true self. So that's a big thing to pay attention to also. So when you want to pursue something, like when I wanted to follow my heart and it felt so right, but then when I was taking steps and I was so uncomfortable, it's because I wasn't listening to my true self. I was listening to everybody else or the stories in my head of what I should be doing. Once you break through to the other side, you really can have the life of your dreams. And I have to keep reminding myself that, right? Like, even though I've gone through things and
Mic
I've
drop.
achieved things, yeah, even though I've actually achieved things I never thought would happen, and, had a daughter at almost 45 years old, I like things that I talked about for years that, like, I don't know, manifested or was meant to be. I have to constantly remind myself that in new areas of my life, that everything is really possible, and we don't need to be in, like, things can be really shitty in the moment, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to be in a really bad place, and good things can still happen. I don't know how better to say that.
No, I think that's a really good point because it goes back to what you were saying and I was saying with the dark and the light and the dancing within that and allowing that duality. Because, right, like when you were speaking, I was really thinking about breath work, right? And what all I teach and what I do. And I was thinking about like when you operate from that space of what you were saying of like just that angst and that anxiety and that exhaustion and all these things, this societal programming of just kind of keep pushing, keep going, just doing what you're being told because this is the stories, this is what you were brought up in, whatever it may be, you're kind of coming from a trauma response, whether you realize you are or not,
Mm-hmm.
because your body, essentially feels the fight or flight. It feels the stress. It feels the angst. And so the body is the channel. The body is the messenger. So if the body is telling you that, like you were saying with your gut, like there's a reason that you're receiving that. There's a reason you're feeling that. And so when you were expressing about being in flow and being in harmony and really, being happy with your decisions, that's when your parasympathetic nervous system is truly in that rest and digest place. That's when everything is just allowing and flowing and you feel that, there's no better way to put it than like you're going from that true peace to that stress, and you can, that's a physical thing you can feel regardless of your listening to this
Yeah.
and you're, I'm not following half this stuff. This is a physical feeling you can actually feel and access. And I think we all know like what our body feels like when it's off and when it's right. And we can tap into that. And maybe we don't know why it's off and we don't know what's being shown to us, but something is, because the body is the channel. And so when you can tap
Mm-hmm.
into that and you can listen, and like you were saying with the gut, like, and you can trust in yourself and say, okay, something is off. I need to take a step back and see what it is. And to your point of also being able to be in the darkness, to be in the sadness, to be in the emotion of, I don't know what this is. I don't know what's going on, why I feel like this, and knowing like it's okay. It can be part of the process. We also are taught so much, in my opinion, to rush through our emotions, especially sad, anger, frustration, all these different things because we don't want to feel them, right? Because we don't want to be in the lower vibration. We want to be happy, we want to be joyous, and that's wonderful. But you can't be that way all the time. I mean, I've even learned this on my journey. And I think that's another trauma response, wanting to like people please and be happy all the time and wanting to constantly like keep things moving and like it's all good, just keep swimming. And it's like, yeah, no, that can't work. It's like that doesn't work. You eventually burn out, you eventually collapse. It's just a matter of fact. It's a matter of when you do. And so I think, to your point too of saying that you can be in a dark place but still have good things is a really good point for people that could be going through this or could be going through a darkness soul and feeling like, oh my god, am I ever going to come out of this? Yes, you will. And you can also have good things that come out of it even before you're even out of it, of your own reflection, of your own shadow work, of what you're going through, what you're needing to see. And so trusting in your gut, like Lisa was saying, I think is so important. And Lisa, I'm curious for you, like when you started realizing things like within your own body and in your own physical space, like the energy was off, different things were off. Did you trust yourself right away or like
Uh,
share that? Because I think that's important for people to also understand.
yeah, I have a lot to say on that. Hopefully, it'll help somebody out there, um, that they can learn from me, because I went through a lot. But before I do, I just want to tell your listeners also, if they don't know this, when you do go through a dark night of the soul, you will go through some physical purging. And so that will make you feel really crappy at times. And that's okay. It's like a release of your body of all the toxins and stuff. So be very gentle on yourself. I went through that for a really long time. I called it the spiritual flu back in 2015, 2016. It was very heavy. I was at to the point of exhaustion at sometimes. I didn't know what was going on. It was all of that release. But for me, it went back 20 years before my awakening, and I had gut issues for 20 years. Fancy that, gut
Oh,
issues. I wouldn't listen to my
wow.
gut. I literally went to every GI doctor. They didn't know what was wrong with me, diagnosed me with everything. I wasn't listening to my gut. The second I started listening to my gut, guess what? no gut issues anymore. I had throat issues for many years. I had my tonsils out in my late 30s because I had strep throat all the time. I wasn't using my voice. I had sinus surgery and lots of sinus head, congestion, sinus surgery also in my late 30s. Guess what? I wasn't having clarity in my third eye. I mean, I can diagnose myself so many times. Other things in my bodies I've actually healed. I'm not going to get into detail, but I've had things in my bodies that I was like, why am I having this? And I would literally give it love and say, this is the reason why I'm having it, and it would just disappear within a few days after years of having something, because I was like,
Wow.
this is why it's there. And so our cells listen to everything. Everything is energy. We've talked about this so many times, Allie, but everything is energy. And so and we know mind, body, and spirit is all integrated. Everything changes. Our bodies, our cells change all the time. Nothing is everything is stagnant. Nothing is stagnant. Everything is moving. But sometimes emotions get stagnant in our body. And what you were
Yeah.
talking about before, when the trauma gets stuck. So there's a neuroscientist that talks about the 90-second rule that says when you have an emotion, because emotion is energy in motion, that it's just supposed to be in your body from the time that it triggers a mental thought to a physical reaction. It's only supposed to run through your body for 90 seconds. It's us that holds on to it longer. It's hard for us to not be upset, angry, or sad for more, for less than 90 seconds. But
Totally.
the truth is, if we can learn to remember that in situations that warrant it, we can realize that we can still look at the situation from a place of observation and neutrality and know we don't have to hold on to that emotion, because emotion is energy in motion. It does get stuck in our body and it presents itself as physical manifestations of symptoms of trauma until we can release it and move it out of the body. It's same with every cell in our body. So the healing process, you think something in your body's like, oh, this is how she wants to feel. Oh, this is how I'm going to keep it going. And it perpetuates. Like the thoughts trigger the emotions trigger the thoughts. It's like this, it's this whole cycle and it presents in physical manifestations. And so when we start to go through the awakening process and the dark night of the soul, we start to purge everything. Our body doesn't know what to do with it. It goes through withdrawal per se. And so that's why we feel all these horrible symptoms. And that's why a lot of people don't really want to get through the dark night of the soul, because they're like, this is hellish. Like, why am I going through? It's so much
Why am
easier
I
to be
doing this?
comfortable in my chaos and stay like where I was, even if it wasn't serving me, because that's what their body physically was used to, right? It sounds so crazy, but when you move through that, you physically feel depleted and worse than everything. But at the end of it, you're definitely more vibrant and have more energy because you've released all that.
Yeah, I love that you spoke to the 90-second rule because I also did not know that until I became a certified breath facilitator, because I talked about that, the neurologist on the team, and how truly it is, emotions, like you said, are energy in motion. And so, like, the fact that it's only supposed to be 90 seconds, think about how most of us, like, no
Mhm.
judgment, because, like, so raising my hand here, like, spend so much more time than 90 seconds. Like, wow, like, how powerful is that if you actually, like, allow the energy just to flow through you instead of holding on to it, like you're saying, because it's true. It's like it will get stagnant. And then we do see things unfortunately manifest into the physical, whether it be an ailment, whether it be a sickness, whatever it is, something comes out because, again, the body's a channel, the body's a messenger. The body needs to tell you what's
Right.
going on. So hopefully you realize something is up and you can heal yourself or find a way to be healed. And I love that you spoke to with you, like how you started recognizing, like, oh, the gut, I'm not listening to my gut. Like, like the head was not listening to the third eye, not having clarity. Like the throat, I've heard so many stories. Actually, I had an astrologer on my podcast some months ago, Simone, who actually had throat cancer. And she had not been using her voice for so long and her gifts in being an astrologer and a medium and all of these things. And she had kept it for so long. And then it eventually manifested. And as soon as she started using her gifts and started working on what she needed to work on, it healed and it went away. And the
Oh,
doctors were
that's
even like
amazing.
obviously massively shocked. But she was like,
Yeah.
once she awakened to her own gifts and realized what she wasn't handling, she was like, oh, this is what this is. And like, I have to
Mhm.
now essentially release this and speak my truth because it's actually manifesting now in my body where it could actually like kill me, and so it
Yeah.
was like, it's so fascinating. But you're right, it's so true, everything is energy. If you believe the way Lisa and I believe it, being energetic beings, being spiritual beings that are having a physical human experience of what we are, and that we are so much more than just this flesh form. It makes sense when you think about the energies and how energy doesn't lie. Think about when you walk into a room in a really simple stance, right? You walk into a room and you're immediately drawn to the energy of that room, that person. That's energy. You're feeling
Mhm.
something. Or you go somewhere and you're like, oh, I don't want to be here. And you immediately leave. That's also energy. And you're picking up on your gut telling you that something is off. These are
Mhm.
actual physical things that you can pay attention to, even if you're not this deep down, into everything you're speaking to. And more, science and, different experts are catching up to this and speaking to this, and explaining how this works, within the brain, within the body, how you were saying the cells are always listening. My sponsor
And the gut brain
and the
connection
gut
too.
brain connection, exactly. And I was going to say, and my sponsor for my show, soak, which and use and love, like it's soaking in sound. There's all different frequencies, for pain, for mental clarity, for abundance, for confidence, for sleep. I mean, the list goes on. And it's like I've been using this app now for almost 2 years, guys, and I have seen a massive difference in any time I've listened and sat and really gotten to pay attention to the frequencies, and it blew me away. And I'm not going to lie, when I first started, I was like, I don't know how this is going to work, but I'll try it. And when it started working, I was like, wait, what? Like, I'll have like a toothache and I'll turn on the tooth pain and jaw pain frequency, and all of a sudden it's like gone. And I'm like, what is happening? It's like, but it's
I
true. I mean,
it
like you said, the cells are always listening, the body's always listening, the gut brain connection. There's so much to us, which is why like we are so powerful and can truly heal ourselves when we are tapped in, when we do trust, when we do allow. But like you were saying so beautifully, Lisa, that so many people get caught up in the comfort of the discomfort of like where they are and don't want to go through to the next level, don't want to be in the dark night of the soul, don't want to question. And so it can be a very isolating place, which, of course, is why I chose to create this podcast, because I felt so alone in my journey, and I can only imagine for you starting in 2007, we're probably way more alone than, I felt.
Yeah, it was crazy. I remember when I was going through it, I was reading the books of the Twilight books, the series.
Oh, uh-huh.
And I felt comfort in reading it because it was about the supernatural. And I was like, somebody understands me, even though it was like completely different, right? It was like my people, but so different.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
it's so spiritual, but no, it's so true. And oh God, I had a thought to say before, and I just forgot my thought. So
Oh, it's all
hopefully
good.
it'll come to me. Yeah.
Well, I
Um,
mean, haha, it's 11:11, I have to say.
oh,
Um, so okay, well, I want to ask you because you mentioned your book briefly. So, you went through a dark night of soul, obviously. You've gone through a lot of changes, a lot of your own healings, a lot of your own ascension, if you will, and continuing to now really speak your truth to, live out what you're wanting, your passion, like you were saying. Just to give a little background, guys, Lisa is like a full blown lawyer. She comes from a family of like very strict, I mean, what would you say? Like very conservative values, very much buttoned up and very much of like the old guard and all of that. What would you say, for people who are listening? And I want you to share about your book that you're writing and everything you're doing, but like, how was it for you to kind of go through all of that to get to where you are now? To being able to, you're kind of playing in both worlds, if you will, right now, because you're working on kind of exiting all of that. What would you share for people that are listening that are like, okay, yeah, I do want to take the leap forward. I do want to allow myself to be inspired by my own fire, have this passion and move forward. What is it like now for you? And, what are you experiencing as you allow yourself to further speak your own truth and, write this book and do what you're doing?
well, first I would say don't take as long as I did. Don't wait for somebody to give you permission. I'm still dipping my toes out, and I'm not 100% in it. Like I don't I don't speak 100% everything in this particular book. I know there's going to be more books. I'm writing another book as well, but slowly it'll trickle out. I feel like what needs to be said in this book will be enough for this book. But thankfully, I went through, my mom. my mom, thank God, she's very cool, and she's my best friend now. We went through a period of time, which and we had to deal with some stuff, and it wasn't fun or pretty, but I feel like she really gives me a lot of support, even if she doesn't know it. She gives me a lot of like that encouragement to do it, and that means more than she'll ever know. Also Russ, my husband, but I think just having that, and just knowing that if I don't, I've been wanting to write for years and years, and the thought of not getting it out into the world was worse than the fear of putting it out into the world, if that makes sense. So I don't want to have that regret. So I'm just doing it, but I'm not like, it's not like a coming out book of everything we're talking about. It's definitely like a little bit more PG, if you may, but it's still things that I've dabbled in since I was a little girl. I've always loved spirituality and self-development and self-help since I was little. Like I'm obsessed with it. So I'm putting out my first book with that, and then hopefully more to come on that as well. And then my novel that I had to put aside for now is about is about the journey with my husband and I, with all different characters in the book and stuff. But it is sort of a book about twin flames and the spiritual awakening journey in that book,
Oh, that's so
because
cool.
it's safe. It's safe because it's a fiction book, right? So I
Right,
don't have
right.
to give all full details of everything. There's sometimes we don't want to disclose everything we've gone through in our life. Like there's things that like I don't need to share to be able to help somebody else. Everybody's journey is different. And that's something that I've learned also, is that I thought I had to disclose every little nitty gritty part of my life in order to help somebody else heal. And that's not true, because everybody's journey is different. They don't need to know my story. As long as I'm not in my story, that I'm standing on my story and not in my story, and I can help people from what I've learned from it, without it doesn't matter my story, your story, what I learned from it, if that can help somebody else, that's more than enough, because everyone's journey is different, and
Yeah.
everyone has a different, thing that they have to get through in this life.
Yeah, it's so true. That's such a good point. I'm excited to check out the novel. That's cool.
Yeah. And it also, like, life should, I mean, it should be fun too. Like even when it's not fun, it should be fun. Like it's okay. Like we've got, I it's like a roller coaster, right? Like there's like the elevation, there's the highs, and then there's the dips. So it goes up and down. But like if we're like life was straight like that, we'd be flatline, because when you do the heart rate, right, it's up and down, right? That,
So
right?
true.
And when you're flatlined, you're gone. So why does life have to be a straight line? Like it's
Oh,
okay if
that's
there's the
so
ups and
good.
downs. So that's something that I feel that people, like, I always thought like, oh, when things are really hard or things are really tough or things are dark, like I'm not doing enough, or there has to be more, something's wrong, or it's not okay. But if we just sit with it, like you were saying earlier, like it's okay to sit with it, right? It doesn't mean we're letting those emotions consume us, because there's a difference in sitting in it and letting it sit in us. We can sit in the sadness and darkness without letting it sit in us, if that makes sense,
Mhm.
because we can experience it, we can observe it, we can be aware of it, we can accept it. Accepting it is huge. When we resist it, we'll feel it more. When we accept it, we can not let it penetrate us, and we can still soak up the darkness without having it penetrate our emotions per se.
Yeah, no, I think that's so powerfully said. And I also think, speaking to what you were saying, like, even with your own journey of realizing like everyone's journey is different. And even for you of kind of dancing between both worlds, if you will, but still very much like allowing yourself to be in the space of spirituality that you really love and have always been drawn to, and allowing yourself to really be in your truth. And like you said, you had some relationship, hiccups and some changes and some shifts. And that's another thing, something for us to mention too. Like when you do go through this, that can happen, and that is
Yeah.
totally normal. And it can be hard again, right? Because you're shaking up your foundation, you're shaking up, what you knew to be true. But if that's what your heart is saying, and that's where if your true heart resonance is, like you have to trust in that, and have to trust the right people are going to align at the right time, the people that are meant to be, around you and support you. And those, in relationships, like you said, like you had a lot of fractures, you had a lot of, darkness and everything, but it came back together. And now like your mom is your best friend. And, and I think that's also something I mentioned too, is like that can happen and does happen. And again, doesn't mean it has to just stay darkness. It can move into a place of light, and it can move into an even stronger place, even if you're not on the same page with everything. And it's okay, like you said, for different people to have different journeys. And I think that's a really huge part, especially as star seeds, for us to recognize that like those who want to receive it will, and those who don't won't. And that's okay. And not making it wrong or right. It's just it is what it is, because it's their own journey. And I think, for me too, like I've had to recognize that over and over again, and continue to observe and continue to just shed my light and be in my truth, and and not make anything wrong, but just really share from that space and that higher frequency, because that is what is going to change what's going on outside. And I think, like, as people are listening to this or watching, just knowing for yourself like what you're doing in your own journey, however you're awakening, is the right way for you. Your journey is different because it's you. We're all uniquely our own soul design, our own soul blueprint. And so trusting in that, and not trying to actually understand, like Lisa was saying, or figure out why you're not this or why you're not that, because you are in your own unique space of how you're going through your journey.
Yeah, I love what you just said. And also I think it's really important also for your listeners to know, if they're going through this, that it doesn't have to be some grand awakening or some grand enlightenment or some grand
So true.
tragedy that happens in their life. Like, it could just be a small, subtle shift, and that's enough. Like, sometimes I feel like people on who are in this realm and are on an awakening journey are like, well, when is that big awakening going to happen? Sometimes it's just in the small, subtle shifts. Like, it doesn't
Such
have
a
to be
good
a
point.
grand event. So that's something. And also, awakening, and I'm so curious if this happened to you too, Allie, because it's happened to me. It happens in stages. It's not like it's a one and done. It's not like I'm awakened, here I am. No,
Yeah.
you get it's like up levels. Like you're in a video game where you're up leveling. So like every time you get there, you're like, why is something else coming out? Like, I thought I went through everything, and now you've got to go through something else, and it might be more massive, it might be less massive, but there's something. There's always, because we're constantly evolving. So awakening is a process. So sometimes it's going to be something like super subtle and a small shift that we have to face, and sometimes it's going to be like a massive hurdle that we've got to overcome. And no judgment for anything on anybody. Everybody, like what you were saying, goes through their own journey at their own time. But the most important thing, I think, for me, that I've realized is that it is really to keep coming back to our core and our true self. And it's like chiseling away all that residue that's built up over the years that doesn't serve us. And that residue constantly comes back, I've noticed. So I'm constantly like, no, no. And I do like these silly, like physical things, like just when I start to go down there, I'm like, nope. And I like physically like fling it away with my hand. I'm like, nope, done. Like, I won't even go there. Chisel away. Like, I'll go. I don't know if anybody can watch this, but I'm like chiseling
Oh yeah,
away
they
my inner
watch and
core.
listen. Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, we're done, we're not going there. And so it's like, it's like, it boggles my mind all the time. Like, I know all this stuff. I've been through hell and back. Like, why am I letting this affect me? Like, why is there more? Like,
Because we're human.
constant, constant,
I mean, we
constant. Yeah.
are. It is
Yeah.
exactly. I think that's such a great point. Is like it's an ongoing journey. Even when you are awakened, even when you are so deep in this, you're still constantly relearning. You're still constantly teaching yourself how to evolve, how to move forward, how to observe. Like, and it's in practice and embodiment that we're continuously stepping into this, and like really understanding it and really listening to ourselves, and that's it can be hard, and so I think it's a
Mhm.
really good point. And I love that you're like, like chisel away. It's like, it's true. It's like, do whatever you need to do. I mean, look, for me, I was even telling my mom this the other day. I was like, when something comes into my mind that, maybe I feel aren't my thoughts, because we know, right? What is it? 600,000 thoughts a day aren't ours, or something like that. So think about that. Like, you're absorbing that from other people, from other people's energies, everything going on in the world, like what you read on social media, whatever it is. So all that stuff is coming through you, and it may not even be yours. Like, holy crap, And so I was telling my mom the other day when she was here, I was like, when things come through that I don't think are mine, or I don't want to be mine, I literally say out loud now, cancel, cancel, cancel 3 times.
Love that. I love that. You have to be a conscious consumer with everything you consume, right? Mind, body, spirit, right? It's constant. I love that. I'm going to
Yeah,
steal that. Cancel,
totally. I'm
cancel,
going to steal the
cancel.
chiseling. I'm going to steal the chiseling. I love it. But it's true. And this is why I think it's so important to have these conversations and to be real about this, because it doesn't have to just be so quote unquote woo. It doesn't have to be just so, spiritual. Like we are energetic beings, like Lisa and I were saying, if that's what you believe. So if you believe that and you embody that, then you recognize everything is energy. So everything is going to affect you in different ways, depending on how the energy is being received. And like Lisa was saying, it gets stagnant and whatever's going on. So then finding those physical tools that you can use, like soak for listening for your cells, and like doing, physical movements that you feel almost like a form of Reiki, with like the chiseling away, and like, speaking out loud, to yourself, different affirmations, or saying like cancel, 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 like whatever it may be, these things actually work, and they actually can shift you and move you through, what you're going through, depending on obviously the level. And I also love, Lisa, that you spoke to how much like it doesn't have to be this like grand moment of like, boom, this is what it is. Like there, I feel like that's built up so much in the spiritual community now. And it's like, no, not really. Not everybody goes through that. And also, too, some people don't even realize they do. Like for me, speaking to like, when you want to receive it and when you're open, like for me, as you know, like 2013 was really my first awakening. My grandmother passed away, but I didn't receive it. She was sending me all kinds of signs. I had seen a psychic medium who was trying to like essentially wake me up and tell me things. And I was just like, oh, no. And like I was seeing things, but it wasn't like clicking or resonating. And I was just like, oh, I don't know if that could be true. And it just kind of kept like, playing out. And then it just kept getting stronger and stronger. And then, of course, we became friends, and then we had certain conversations. And then, like, that clicked for me. And then I had another conversation with someone else, and then things just started to align. It was like, huh, okay, maybe there is more, and then it was like, then getting, pregnant with my first daughter, which I believe we are truly, the portal, from, the heavens, from God, creator, source, whatever it is you believe, to, your children. And that's why we feel so much, and why we are tapped in so much spiritually during that time and receive so much. And for me, that was like the next level. And then 2020, and of course I was pregnant again with my second daughter, and it was just like, boom, and the lights came on, and so it's like, you're right, it's like it can be in stages, it can very much be, not this grand moment. And so having that grace and compassion for yourself too, to be like, it's okay to just experience, and like Lisa was saying too, like, enjoy, and not be like stagnant, and not feel like it has to be like this, grand answer or grand awakening. And you can just play in it, and enjoy it and observe it, and also know that there may be some deeper, darker parts of it, but knowing that it's going to help you get to your higher self. It's going to help you get to that soul fulfilled, soul led purpose, and trusting in that. And I just think like that is, full circle of kind of what we've talked about, of everything that, we both have kind of gone through in our own journeys.
Oh, and I so remember when you were going through that. I remember all of the signs that you were getting and everything. And
I
one thing
kept
I want to,
screenshotting you stuff.
yeah, I remember. And one thing I want to say is going back to the concept of the energy. One easy way for somebody who's a little skeptical and all the energy stuff can understand this is how they feel when they listen to music. Music, I really feel, is the most powerful form of energy. It can transmute your feelings, your DNA. It's so powerful. Like you just put on like an amazing song or one of your favorite songs or a powerful ballad, and it just, you feel differently. You feel it in your body, right? So and all it is energy. So going back to the soak app, because I got that from you, I use it daily. I really do. It's my daily ritual. It really sets the tone for me. I put it on every single morning. There is something with frequency, with energy. Music is like the telltale sign, like for somebody who's skeptical, just put on a certain song and you'll change your vibe, right? It's all vibration, right? You've got, how do you feel? Your vibe is vibration. So I really do love that. But yeah, it's all those little signs from the universe that are really fun to like
Yeah.
follow, the little breadcrumb trails.
Right. Like you see like the numbers, like I was saying, 1111 when we were, for, I saw it on my clock, or, for me, it was 222 with my grandmother. Like there's so many signs that show up, and it starts being in your face so much to the point where you're like, okay, wait a second, what's going on
Well,
here?
that was the thing. When I started to awaken back in 2007, I would see 1111 everywhere, everywhere 1111. I didn't know, years later I read that when you start to awaken, that's the number you see, because the 211s act as like gateways and
Yes,
portals and
gateways.
stuff. I had a coworker at the time who sort of knew my story, and then years later she kept saying 1111, and I'm thinking in my head, oh, you're awakening. And then
Yep.
sure
Yep.
enough, she did. Like it's so true. It really is. It's like the awakening number. But
Yeah, and I
yeah,
think that's such a good point, because anyone listening or watching, like, pay attention to those
yeah,
signs. When you start to
yeah.
become more conscious and you start to see things, like, start to play with it, start to ask, like, is this something you trust me? You will be surprised what you receive. You will be like, oh, I got another sign. Oh, that was confirmation. Like you'll start to get your own. Like I remember when I went to the psychic medium back in, I think it was like end of 2013 or early 2014. And this amazing guy, Jake in New York, was like telling me all this stuff about my grandmother. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, how does this guy know this stuff? Like you can't Google this. You can't look this up. Like, how does he know? And I'm like sitting and I have total disbelief and I'm not really like, it's not resonating. And I'm just like, okay, okay. And then he's like, and you're seeing the number 222. And I was like, and I'm looking at him and he's like, you see it over and over again. And I was just like, uh-huh. And he's like, yeah, like there's a reason trying to get your attention. And then it clicked like, oh, and this is the day she passed was 222, 2013. And it was like, holy crap, she's using that number to get my attention. And then, if you get really deep into it and you go to numerology, they tell you to add the numbers. And so it's like, okay, 2 and 2 is 6. And so it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? Why is 6? And then I'm like having another conversation, like our good friend Kevin Sexton, who's very much awakened and like used to blow our mind when we were both still like really deep, like into learning everything. And we'd be having like dinner conversations about this, by the way, guys, just like set the scene. And our husbands would be opposite side, like, what the frick is going on? And
Yeah, and we'd be like, I was bawling my eyes out because he like tapped into something. I was like, how the hell did he know that?
exactly. There's like things you just can't make up. And, and so we're sitting there and, he's like, well, what is it with 6? And then all of a sudden it like clicked and it was like, oh my God, this is the road I drove on, my entire childhood, my mom, my grandmother, and this is where we had memories. And it was like, holy shit, and then you start to like see this and feel this, and it just starts to make more and more sense. And you start to be like, oh, you can't make this up. You can't just
Nope.
say like it's a coincidence. Like it just starts
Nope.
to, so really trust, like Lisa was saying, going back to trusting in the gut, trusting in those signs that, you are awakening, and it may take time and it may be in stages, and that's okay. It's okay to go back to sleep, essentially, like Lisa
Yes.
was saying, like 2007 and then 2015, like same for me. It was like 2013 and then it was like a little bit 2015 and then it was like 2017 and then 2018 and then boom, 2020. So it's just having that openness and having that conscious awareness as much as you can to receive and to trust. And then eventually, if you're really meant to be activated, well, trust us, you'll be activated. You'll really be kind of essentially shook at some point where it is, I don't want to say, because you don't want to, of course, put fear, but there is some kind of catalyst that will happen, good or bad, that will essentially kind of say, okay, it's time, because you're needed. And I do believe, in my opinion, that more and more are being called right now because of what we are going through in the collective, and that there is so much to shift and there is so much that is happening. And so more and more are awakening and are needed now to bring this light, to ascend humanity to where we're going.
I agree with you 100%. And I also feel, and this happened to me too, when you don't pay attention to the signs and the universe wants you to pay attention, it will throw it in your face over and over and over
Yeah, and
until you
eventually like
cannot
take
miss
a
it.
yeah, and
Oh
eventually
yeah.
like take a metaphysical hammer and whack you over the head and be like,
Yes.
hey,
Oh
you
yeah.
paying attention
Oh
now?
yeah. Oh yeah. It will get your attention one way or the other. So if it's meant to be, you cannot run from your awakening. That is the one
Oh,
thing I learned.
that's going to be the name of this episode. You can't run from your
You can't
awakening.
run from your awakening. It will find you. It will hunt you down. It hunted me down. It
So
found me. It
true.
cracked me open. Yes, you cannot hide. There is no escape.
I
Thank
love it.
goodness. It was the best. It was the hardest thing ever and the best thing ever. So
And thank
yeah.
you for saying that, because I was going to say same for me. Like, I mean, I cried to you about so much stuff when I was going through it, because I really became close to you when I was going through so much. And you're right; it's like it can be the hardest thing, which is hence the dark night of the soul. And it's not just one night. It's very much can be a long period, but also trusting in that you're getting to the light at the end of the tunnel. And like Lisa said, there is so much more peace. It is such a blessing. And Lisa has known me for many years of my life and has seen me go through many, many phases. So she can truly speak to and attest to the high strung, super stressed out, broken down woman I was for many years, especially in the Hollywood scene, to where I am now. And I'm so grateful for where I am now.
And I loved every aspect of you. Every aspect.
Thank you. And I think that's a beautiful point, by the way, that you just made before we wrap up here, about loving every aspect, like having that grace for yourself and that compassion as you go through it, and loving yourself for those parts that did show up for you, that did play a role, that did, be part of your journey to be able to move into this higher version of yourself.
Yeah, self-love is key for everything. Self-love, the hardest relationship and the greatest relationship is the one we have with ourselves. That
Oof.
sets the tone for
Yeah.
everything else. It really, and that was a hard one for me to learn. I thought my husband came to save me. He didn't come to save me. He came to show me that I can save myself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so true. And I love that you said that. I think that's such a powerful place to wrap this up because you're right that the relationship with self, the way we show up for ourselves, the way we treat ourselves, the way we speak to ourselves, all of it is so massive. And no one's coming to save you. It's about you and you doing the work and you being able to move through to awaken to this. This is what's meant to be for you, and to use that to truly harness the gold within you and be able to really shine your own light. So, Lisa, thank you so much for sharing yours and your story. And I can't wait for everyone to hear this episode. Tell us where we could find you and follow you. And if you can share any book details, I know it's not done yet and you got it in the works, but whatever you want to share.
Oh my God. First of all, thank you for having me. Take two. I love you
Take two.
so much. I love you. I love you. Yeah, the book is The Drama Diet. It'll be out 2023
Woohoo.
and it'll have card decks. You can find me at Lisa Stuart Official, which is at Instagram, and Lisa Stuart Official at Facebook. Lisa Stuart is my website. Yeah. And I actually have a Lisa Stuart handle on YouTube now.
Oh, amazing. Cool. I'm jealous. I
Yeah.
tried to have mine and it was gone. And I was like, okay. So I actually ended up doing
Oh,
Allie Levine design two. And
that was meant to be.
that's what I thought. I was like, okay, that was
Yes.
meant to be. Yeah.
Yes.
So cool. And
Yes.
everything will be in the show notes, guys. So you can find Lisa. You can check out her book when it is out in 2023. And Lisa, thank you so much, love, for just sharing everything about your journey and helping others who are on this journey. And guys, just real quick, since I did speak about soap with Lisa, and she does genuinely use the app like me every day. If you do want to try soap, use my code capital ALI 70, Ali 70. Go to soaak.com or just download the Soak app and you'll be able to try it out. You can try all the different frequencies, different programs, they all different affirmations that they'll text to you. And if you want to dive into my breath work, I have breathwork offerings on there as well. I did a whole collaboration with them. So thank you so much to Soak for my show. And I hope this helps awaken something within you, expand something within you, or just give you some clarity. So love, light, and blessings, everyone. Please leave a 5-star review if you haven't already on the show. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.